I grew up in a wonderful family, mom, dad, older sister, younger sister. I was in the middle. We went to church every Sunday. Mom sat on one end, dad sat on the other, and three girls sitting in the middle. My father was very spiritual, encouraged us to read our Bibles. We said our prayers at meals and said, "Now I lay me down to sleep every night." Around the time I was 17, 18 years old, things started to change. People around me began seeing what I called quizzical things. They made no sense to me, especially on my job. Strange people would come by and say, "Who's your dad?" In our family, on Saturday mornings, if Daddy woke you up with a back rub, that meant you could have whatever you wanted for breakfast and you were his for the day. You were going to be cleaning the garage, mowing grass, trimming trees. You know, he had bought you for the day. And that morning, Daddy woke me up with a back rub. My sister and I shared a bedroom, and she was not in her bed. And I remember that because that was different. And he said, "Wake up, I need to talk to you, just sit up." And I sat up in the bed, and Daddy sat on the other bunk bed, and he was holding my hands. And he said, "I need to tell you that I am not your biological father." And at that point, you know, your whole world just moves. I had no idea I wasn't who I thought I was. And that started this whole journey to understanding who I was and how I came to be. This lady followed me home. After making 4 right turns, we didn't have cell phones in those days. I went to the nearest populated place, which was a Hooks drugstore. And in that drugstore, I was confronted by a man who I knew to be my biological father. He was basically swathed in bandages. His head was wrapped, his arms were wrapped. He was standing there with his hands like this, and he was a very dark man, and I couldn't see anything of his face other than his eyes. His chest was taped, and he had on a light jacket. And I stood up and I said, "Can I help you?" And he says, just in a very gruff voice, "Do you know who I am?" And I just stood there and I looked, and you know, I just really trying to see what he looked like. And I thought, this must be the guy that's my real dad. This must be him. And I said, "Well, I think I do." And he said, And that was it. The sales clerk was handing me my lipstick, and I said, "Is that it?" And he just basically pivoted out of my way. I did not feel that this was somebody I really wanted to get to know. My dad that raised me and I had lots of talks about it, and Daddy said, "I believe that was him." I had heard stories that he had been in a fire. He's likely just gotten out of the hospital and for whatever reason wanted to connect with you. He said, if you would like to go and meet with him, I would be willing to take you. If you want, I'd stay with you. If you want me to leave, I'd leave you there, wait in the car, whatever you want to do. He said, that's your real dad, and if you want a relationship with him, I can understand that. He said, on the other hand, I have loved you since the moment I laid eyes on you. I am your dad. I will always be your dad. When I met your mom, I knew that she came with 2 kids, and I fell in love with the 3 of you. I think I was comfortable knowing that I was in a family that I belonged in, a family that loved me. The hurtful part for me was, we were raised to not lie. And so now you guys are telling me that my whole life has been a lie. I knew that something was broken. My mom and I didn't always have the best relationship, and I could never put my finger on why. And since then, I understand it more fully. It's hard to share things with your children, but I think you have to realize that it's also hard and it can be devastating to keep things from your children. And when we hide things, those things grow in the dark, like mushrooms, and they get bigger It's like the boogeyman in the closet. He gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you turn that light on, there's no boogeyman there at all. And life is like that. You gotta find a way with your children to turn that light on so that we can see that there's no boogeyman in the closet. I'm on very good ground. Yeah. I can honestly, I wrote him in a letter once, and I said, I insist on calling him Dad. I said, unless you tell me not to, I will always call you Dad. Daddy is Daddy, and he can be Dad. And I tell him in those letters, I always sign them Love Vivian, because I can love him. I mean, had it not been for him, I wouldn't be here. Had it not been for him, Sydney wouldn't be here. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't have Aunt Betty and Aunt Evelyn. And all these cousins, the aunts and uncles that have died, I can feel like I know them because of the stories that they've shared with me. So yeah, how can I not love him? And for he to appear today, I would accept him as my father, because that's what he is.